there has been a horrible amount of anti-Semitism
Right.
brought against Jewish people by people who claim to be Christians.
So most people would consider Judaism and Christianity two mutually exclusive theologies or religions. And when I was growing up, this is exactly what I thought as well. You know, Jesus is for them, Moses is for us.
Yeah.
But an open and unbiased study of the Hebrew scriptures showed me otherwise. How do Judaism and Christianity actually fit together?
Well, yeah, I think my experience is rather similar to yours. I do think it's important for us to note that while you and I and many others have come to see, no, they're not mutually exclusive, and no, they're not opposites. In fact, they fit really well together. In fact, I'll even say it more strongly. We do have to acknowledge there has been a terribly painful history between these two groups of people. And there has been a horrible amount of anti-Semitism brought against Jewish people by people who claim to be Christians. So there's good reason why we would think these are antagonistic towards each other. They shouldn't be, but history gives us evidence as to why people are predisposed to believe that. So I don't think that those are legitimate reasons to say that they're separate, but we don't just come to this topic in a sterile environment.
Right.
It's a pretty messy environment. What I have found, I mean, similar to you, I grew up, in a Jewish home, but I really didn't know the Hebrew scriptures all that well. It was after I came to be a believer in Jesus, and I saw enough of the prophecies in the Tanakh that were fulfilled in the person of Yeshua that I just started exploring both testaments and found these are not two separate books. They really fit together very, very well. And there's this theme of partial fulfillment and greater fulfillment that just builds all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have found, and this is really disturbing to me, but I think there's just a whole lot of Christians who don't know of the Jewish roots of their Christian faith. And so they think of it as a very non-Jewish belief. And they don't know the Old Testament, the Tanakh.
Right.
And then, of course, Jewish people know very little, if anything, about the New Testament, about Jesus. And so they think of it as these two completely different things. But when you start reading them, I mean, the echoes flowing back and forth are just amazing. When I first read the Gospel of Matthew, someone had given me a paperback version of the New Testament, and on the cover it said "The Great News," and I thought, well, that's a slick piece of marketing. I like that. So I started reading, and after a little while, I thought, this is great, and it is new. For me, it's new. I thought Jesus was a Gentile who said very, very non-Jewish things. Well, no, he was fitting right in with all of the prophets. The book of Matthew, the very first book in the New Testament, begins with a genealogy of names, all of which are Jewish, all of which are Hebrew names. They're ones that I knew from my scripture. I was like, wait a minute, this is just like picking up where the Tanakh left off. In fact, the version of the Tanakh that I was given for my bar mitzvah, the order, the sequence of the books is a little bit different than what is typically in a Christian Bible. So the Tanakh ends with a whole bunch of names in Chronicles. And so Matthew just kind of picked up, oh, well, we got a list of names here. I'll begin my book with a list of names. So the books fit together.
Right.
But they fit together in a sense of like anticipation and fulfillment. And when you read the anticipation, but you don't read the fulfillment, it feels like, wait a minute, this is like an unfinished story. This is like, you've left me hanging. You're like, there's too many predictions here that haven't come true yet. And that's why when you read Matthew's gospel in particular, for me, but all of the scripture, the New Testament, there's sort of this sense of like, Oh, that's what that was pointing to.
Right.
Oh, that story was incomplete until now. And I still, 40 plus years later, I still keep seeing those connections. And it's like, oh, that story now makes so much more sense.
Yes, the flow from the Old Testament or the Tanakh into the New Testament is pretty seamless, because the first book of, I think, isn't it Mark, in terms of chronological order, begins with the coming of the one that is of the spirit of Elijah.
Yeah.
And the Old Testament closes before Chronicles, which is basically the chronology of everything that happened. Ends with the coming of Elijah the prophet. And so it's a wonderful seamless continuation of the cyclical story that continues throughout the Old Testament. And I remember reading the first sentence of the New Testament, and I was blown away as a Jewish kid, having no experience in either the Old Testament or the New Testament, reading the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, son of David, son of Abraham. And I said, this is no less Jewish than everything I've ever read from the Old Testament. Amazing. So they fit together seamlessly. We have a problem, and this is how it's fulfilled.
Yeah. And by the way, there's two things that did stand out to me as when I said it was news. Okay, the first thing was the rabbi at my synagogue, and all of my Jewish culture and very secular open-mindedness. I had been indoctrinated really that all religions are basically the same, and Jesus wasn't really saying anything different than anybody else had said. And he was just a good teacher who said some really nice things about how we should love one another. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, then I started reading, and yeah, he did say some nice things about how we should love one another. But he made these outlandish, amazing statements about himself, claiming to be the Messiah, claiming to have always existed from all eternity, claiming to be God himself, accepting worship. I mean, either this guy is the craziest megalomaniac who's ever lived, or he really was who he said he was.
Right, right.
That was the first thing that really grabbed me. The other thing was that whole theme about fulfillment. It's not as simplistic as a lot of people think. Fulfillment in the scriptures or prophecy, it's not always, I mean, sometimes it is, but it's not always as precise as on Tuesday at 2 p.m, this guy is going to show up. And then on Tuesday at 2 p.m, he showed up. Well, there are some of those kinds of predictions, but they're much more, it's like a bigger category about fulfillment. And it's this kind of picture, like the picture of God parting the water and delivering people through the Red Sea, is a picture of God's salvation and then punishing God's enemies. That's a picture that then gets filled out in much, much bigger ways of God providing something even far bigger than just temporary salvation. And so it's that kind of, there are all these fulfillment images that get a fuller expression. And so the whole theme of prophecy and fulfillment, at first it was kind of like a stumbling block for me. I was like, wait a minute, I don't think this is quite as simple as some of those charts that people have shown me.
Right.
But when I studied it and dug in, oh, this is so much better, so much bigger. And very consistent with the way the prophets talked about the past and the future. The prophets saw that things in the past were foreshadowing things that were still yet to come in the future.
Yes. I agree. It's important to take a deeper dive, and that's what a lot of the passages, the prophetic passages, force you to do if you're actually really curious to look. And I would encourage anyone, just as well as you would, to open up the New Testament and take a look.